Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me on this DV8 deep dive for the brand new Heckler ball, which includes this brand new Unholy core. My name is Bryan Buckosh, core design engineer with DV8, and today we're talking about not only this new Heckler, but also an entire system of core designs that are patented, that are built specifically for no-thumb and two-handed bowlers. Now, first of all, you may have noticed that this is a patented system and be asking, why do two-handed and no-thumb bowlers need a separate core system? And the answer is a combination of factors. When we were sitting in the R&D room, we were trying to understand what the limitations are for two-handed bowling, and we came to the realization that as the sport is evolving and as more and more people throw with two hands and no thumb in the ball, that the style is evolving to have many PAPs, many different release styles. But also, because of that, the USBC has changed the rules a little bit. You'll remember that you used to be able to put balance holes or thumb holes in the ball, and now neither of those are allowed. Because of that, just putting two fingers in the ball has been very restrictive for standard core designs. We realized this as a problem and a limiting factor in ball motion for two-handed bowlers and no-thumb bowlers, so we went to work and we decided that we needed to devise a system that gives more drilling versatility in each individual core for these no-thumb bowlers and gives them the ability to fine-tune the numbers like they used to be able to when thumb holes and balance holes were allowed. Now, with only the fingers, with both the dualistic core inside the Troublemaker and this new Unholy core inside the Heckler, we're able to achieve a wide range of post-drill differential numbers, which is going to change the flare potential either more or less depending on how you drill it. And now intermediate differential numbers, depending on how you drill it, you can get a relatively tame reaction as the ball encounters friction with less intermediate differential, or relatively strong response to friction with a lot of intermediate differential with some of the tall pin layouts. We're going to dive into the layouts in particular for this Heckler in a little bit, but first I wanted to talk about the generalities of this core system and how it works. It looks pretty daunting when you look at the unique core designs, but it's actually a pretty simple concept, and once you understand that overarching concept, it's very easy to apply the concept to very specific layouts for each individual bowler. So what we've developed is a system with three zones built into the core. There's zone 1, which is the top of the core, and in both cases, the dualistic core and in the Unholy core, we've got a top knob built into the core. It's very close to the shell of the ball, and when you drill your fingers into this top knob, which means that the fingers are very close to the dot on either ball, then you're reducing the height of the core, you're driving the differential down, and you're making the core numbers much weaker. This is going to give you a smoother and less flaring ball motion overall. You'll notice that both of these cores have a void or a bowl in the middle of the cores, and where there's no core material, you can drill your fingers. We're calling this zone number 2. In zone number 2, if you drill your fingers, you're going to get a reaction that is very benchmark in shape. This is because when you drill your fingers as much as 3 inches deep, you're really not hitting much of the inner core material at all. That means with drilling out lighter compound material, you're not changing the post-drilled numbers of this core very much, which means that the resulting drilled differential numbers and RG values are very close to that of the undrilled ball. This is going to result in a benchmark symmetrical shape for the Troublemaker or a benchmark asymmetrical shape for the new Heckler. The third and final zone is the side of the core for each of these cores. Zone number 3 puts the fingers 4.5 inches from the dot or greater. When you're in this long third zone with a tall pin layout, that means that you're hitting the side of this core very readily. The inner core bodies stick out very close to the shell in both of these designs, which means that you're immediately changing the differential and the intermediate differential numbers as soon as you drill into this inner core. By moving a lot of mass from this inner core in the side, you're making this core relatively taller and more asymmetric. That's going to blow up the diff numbers, blow up the intermediate diff numbers, and give you a very strong, very high flaring, and very strong response to friction ball, regardless if it's the symmetrical Troublemaker or the asymmetrical Heckler. Both of these balls, after drilling, result in a core with high intermediate differential, which means asymmetry and high response to friction. Now that you see the three zones, I think it's easy to see that even though the designs for each of these cores are both very unique, the original symmetrical dualistic core inside the Troublemaker was an amazing benchmark option for no-thumb bowlers and two-handed bowlers alike. With its moderate 0.45 undrilled differential, you had lots of drilling options with the original Troublemaker. You could put your fingers in zone 1 to create an amazing control option. You could put your fingers in zone 2 for a benchmark symmetrical option, and in zone 3, that makes the ball a very strong ball with asymmetrical characteristics and a hard response to friction. But that still left room above that Troublemaker for an even more aggressive asymmetrical bowling ball that has built-in asymmetry that can be boosted after drilling. Now, we're going to take a second and do a deep dive into the numbers of this Unholy core inside the new Heckler. With an undrilled RG of 2504, a total differential of 051, and an intermediate differential of 010 before drilling, this is going to be a relatively high flaring asymmetrical ball with a neutral layout. Because it's only 010, that's only a little bit of intermediate differential because typically no-thumb and two-handed bowlers don't need as much help in the mid lane with a change of direction due to the asymmetry of the core. We built this with a moderate amount of asymmetry, but of course, as you've learned about this patented system, you can modulate the amount of asymmetry and the amount of total differential to get this ball to hook harder and more with higher differential, and sharper with more asymmetry depending on the layout that you choose. We're going to walk through the specific layouts and the post-drilled numbers of this ball. Bear in mind that we're using a 5/0 up-down PAP as a neutral control PAP to represent a wide range of no-thumb bowlers, and we're drilling our fingers 3 inches deep in all of these layouts. That's the recommended depth for all layouts for no-thumb bowlers for DV8. Starting with our most control layout, this is going to put the fingers directly in the top of zone number 1. With the fingers 1.5 inches from the dot to the center of grip, and your favorite pin to PAP position, the total differential of the Heckler is going to go from 0.51 to 0.38. That's cutting the flare potential by a lot. The intermediate differential remains relatively the same at 0.11, and what you're left with is a Tor-type differential asymmetrical ball with low flare potential but still some intermediate differential to sharpen up the breakpoint a little more than a control layout would on a symmetrical ball. So with less differential and less flare potential, this is going to be a go-to ball for players who have high rev rates, lower speed, or for players who are trying to control shorter or lighter patterns. If you put your fingers in zone 2 on this core, you're going to end up with a strong benchmark motion. At 3.5 inches from the dot to the center of grip, you're going to catch most of the bowl of this core, but also a little bit of the core side. This results in a finger placement that gives you a total differential of 0.051. The undrilled differential of this ball is, you guessed it, 0.051, which means you've retained almost the exact characteristics of the undrilled ball. Because the fingers touch the core side just a little bit, you're going to boost the intermediate differential just a little bit to 0.15. 0.15 is still in the very middle range of the intermediate differential, which means that you've got a strong control option that gives you a little more kick at the back of the lane, but is still squarely in the strong benchmark range of ball motion. Combining this with the strong surface on this ball, this should be a strong yet controllable option that gives you good shape at the breakpoint for an asymmetrical ball without being too strong in the mid lane or too forward down lane. Jumping to the strongest of the layout options for this new Unholy core, we've got zone number 3. You've got 2 options in zone number 3. You can put the fingers 4.5 inches dot to the center of grip for a sharper layout, or 5.5 inches dot to the center of grip for a strong mid lane layout. At the strongest layout, 5.5 inches dot to the center of grip, you're going to get a total differential of 0.64. That is a nice jump up from the 0.51 undrilled numbers, and more than that, you can double the amount of intermediate diff from the strong benchmark layout. The strong benchmark layout was 0.15 intermediate differential, but with 5.5 inches dot to center of grip, you're getting a massive 0.25 intermediate diff out of this core. That's going to result in a strong mid lane read, an incredibly high flare potential, and a very strong mid lane motion overall. This layout is incredibly good for players who have high ball speed or lower rev rate for a two-handed or no-thumb bowler, and of course it's going to be great on high volumes and patterns that are a little more difficult with a little less right to left hook and recovery. One last piece of the puzzle to throw at you. With the Heckler being an asymmetrical ball, you are going to be able to control the mass bias with the first drilling angle, the first angle in the dual angle layout system. As with any ball using dual angles, you're going to be able to swing that mass bias to control the level of asymmetry. Now, all of the layouts that I just mentioned were using a strong mass bias location that puts the mass bias in line with the fingers. You have the option to use a longer first angle, or a longer drilling angle as it's known, to increase the amount of asymmetry in this core, and that's going to result in a later revving and sharper motion overall in the layout system. However, if you choose to have an earlier revving and smoother motion, simply you're going to choose a smaller drilling angle, and that's just going to allow you to kick that mass bias out toward the VAL. That ball is going to rev up a little earlier and be a little smoother off the end of the pattern. To make things as easy as possible for the pro shop operators and you high-level bowlers alike, we've provided for you guys an asymmetric layout converter. This converter works just like it did for the symmetrical version for the Troublemaker, but in case you're unfamiliar with that, we're going to review it again right here. This layout tool is actually quite useful, and it only requires the same number of inputs that you would use to put any layout on any ball anyway. Those are the PAP, the dot to PAP, or the pin to PAP, I'm going to use those interchangeably, and the dot to center of grip distance that you select. When you're inputting the bowler's PAP coordinates, then you're going to go ahead and break them into components. You're going to apply the horizontal component first, and then you're going to input the vertical component. Just remember, if the bowler's PAP is over and up, you're going to use a positive number for the vertical component, and if the bowler's PAP is over and down, then you're going to use a negative number in the vertical component slot. You can type these as fractions, or you can type them as decimal numbers, and they should convert to fractions automatically for you. Just remember, if you're using fractions, put a space between the whole number and the fraction. Next, you're going to input the bowler's chosen dot to PAP or pin to PAP. I'm going to use those interchangeably. We're going to recommend that you stick with the bowler's favorite pin to PAP position, but you can always use a stronger pin to PAP position for more change of direction and more flare, or a longer pin to PAP position for a slightly later revving and smoother reaction overall. This works in conjunction with the dot to center of grip distance or pin to center of grip distance for any non-dot bowling balls, and of course, that is going to be your next input. Next, you're going to input the chosen dot to center of grip distance. Remember, we're working with the new patented technology here, so you're going to choose your zone, zone 1 for control, zone 2 for benchmark, or zone 3 for a stronger or sharper reaction. And of course, you can use the downloaded PDF, the dot to center of grip distance guide, to educate your decision. We've got 5 options for you, 1.5 inches to 5.5 inches as the recommended range. And of course, you can do increments of a ½ inch in any direction to fine-tune the reaction to the one that you want. With the asymmetric converter, we're allowing the pro shop operator to pick the drilling angle for the ball motion that they want. We're giving you a range that works with the bowler's PAP to ensure that the layout is safe when you apply it to the ball. All you have to do is pick an angle within the recommended range. The first angle is going to be the lowest recommended angle, and that's going to be for the fastest revving, earliest reading response. And the second option is the highest range. This is going to be the max angle that we're recommending for the layout. That's going to be for the latest revving and potentially sharpest break point. It's also going to help the ball get down the lane the longest before revving up. Of course, you can pick any angle in between, and for most layouts for most conditions, we are recommending a choice that falls right between the high and the low range of angles. You're also left with the dot to PAP position that you selected, and a VAL angle that's going to result in the exact dot to center of grip distance that you chose at the top of the sheet. The reason that we've built this converter for you is because standard dual angle layouts don't work particularly well for no-thumb bowlers. What happens is the range of PAPs that a no-thumb bowler can achieve is much greater than the range with the thumb in. meaning you can have very short horizontal coordinates and very tall horizontal coordinates from one player, and another no-thumb player might have a PAP that is very far over and very far down. The resulting VAL angles from a standard dual angle layout, say 30 degrees for example, might put the pin in a very, very different location from the fingers for the short over and tall up coordinate than it would for the very long over horizontal coordinate and far down horizontal coordinate. The resulting ball motion with two different dot to center of grip distances is going to be very different for that player. So what this converter does is it controls the dot to center of grip distance and it normalizes the VAL angles for all of the players. So even though one player's VAL angle might be different from another player's VAL angle when you choose 3.5 inches dot to center of grip for both players, that's okay, because the resulting post-drilled numbers and the resulting ball motion for both players is going to be very, very similar thanks to this converter. Since two-handed and no-thumb bowling has been sweeping the youth movement nationwide, we decided it was worthwhile to create the same patent-pending technology in a lightweight core for 12 and 13 pounds. Now, this core has a higher total differential than the standard generic lightweight asymmetrical cores that we put in our DV8 balls, but not only that, it has the same patent-pending zone technology that the heavyweight 14 through 16 pound model does as well. You can see with the stem in zone 1, the bowl in zone 2, and the bowl side in zone 3 for the side of the core, you can select a layout to reduce the differential, have a strong benchmark motion, or have a stronger asymmetrical motion for your youth bowler in the exact same way that the adult bowlers have for the 14 through 16 pound model. That's all the information I've got on this brand new Unholy core inside the Heckler. This new patent-pending technology is emerging and it's on the cutting edge of no-thumb bowling technology. Because it's patent pending, that means DV8 is right now the only brand that's available to do it. It's going to give you the widest range of motions out of each individual core. And now that we're developing a family of cores, you have even more options to fine-tune your arsenal for your game in the patterns that you see. Using this new dual angle converter is going to result in specific layouts that are going to match exactly how you want this core and cover matchup to match up to your game. It's never been easier for no-thumb and two-handed bowlers to build an arsenal with the tools we've given you. And that's all thanks to this patent-pending technology and the asymmetric or symmetric dual angle converter that we've provided for you. I just wanted to point out that all of this information is available as a resource to you on a brand new tab on the DV8 Bowling website. Simply go to dv8bowling.com. Click on the Balls tab and you'll have a link to no-thumb resources where you can download the asymmetric and symmetric dual angle converters, the dot to center of grip distance guides that provide you recommendations on how far the finger should be away from the dot to get the provided layouts that you want, and all the information, videos, resources, and more on the Troublemaker, the Heckler, and upcoming information as it's available to you for this no-thumb patent-pending technology. You can also find and download all of this information by scanning the QR code that's found on the ball box, on the information sheet, and on the shelf talker for the DV8 Heckler. Make sure you follow DV8 on all your social media platforms because we're going to be updating you with all of the new information on the Unholy core, the DV8 Heckler ball motion, and much more information on our patent-pending no-thumb technology. I've been Bryan Buckosh, and this has been the deep dive on the DV8 Heckler and the Unholy core. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.